welcome to tonight's Business Support and Digital Overview and Scrutiny Committee. Apologies for absence. Councillor Sand.
Yeah, I'm subbing for Councillor Pearce.
Thank you. I have no urgent matters. Can I sign the record of the meeting held on the 26th of March as correct? Are there any declarations of DPR or other interests or any declarations of whipping? That brings us on to agenda item 5, Climate Change Action Plan 2025 to 2028, Year 1. I will ask Bob Diamond, Chief Leisure Environment Officer, to introduce the report. Bob.
Thanks, Chair. Members will recall I came to this committee this time last year with a draft of the action plan, which committee was kind enough to support. It then went on to Cabinet for formal approval in August last year. It's a 4-year plan, and we're reporting today against the first year. Just to be clear to members, the first year is a calendar year we're talking about here, so it's the 25 calendar year we're talking about from this. As members will see, 35 of the 42 actions have been started. As you'll envisage, over 4 years, many of them have multiple phases to them, so they won't be completed probably until year 3 and year 4. But I'm pleased most of them have started. And in the report, I've tried to cover off the reasons behind the 7 that haven't started. Primarily, they just come down to capacity issues. If I reference the one from the property team, because of the changes at Gun Wharf, they just asked if they could start that work in 26 rather than 25. It doesn't alter the time frame for completion of that work. I've also tried to reference in the report a number of areas that weren't in the original action plan because they've come forward since then. So an example of that is the Warm Homes Local Grant. Council's got circa £1.3 million for improvements to homes for families on a combined income of less than 36,000 per annum. I decided against updating the action plan for this year, just because I didn't want it to turn into just a kind of ongoing update, where we'll look to add those in at year 2, so that by the time this comes back to you for the second year's report, those will have been added in as the actions into it, so it will expand to include those that have come forward. I've also tried to just give you a summary at the end of some of the actions and what's been done for it. This obviously is not a work, although I head up the climate response team. This is very much a council-wide. I think there are 16 different services that feed into this. So this is a collated report of a number of services. So apologies in advance if there are some specific questions that I can't answer today, but I'll happily take those away and ask the relevant service managers to provide answers for it. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Bob. Any member? Councillor Brown.
Firstly, thanks for the report. Actually, my question does relate to what you said about not being able to provide us with an update on some of the specifics. I understand that there are several officers that have responsibility for their leads. I would respectfully ask, it doesn't have to be done like tonight or anything like that, but through a briefing paper that members are given the contact details for each of those officers, because I understand that the director of place is heading it up as the overall person in charge, but we can't keep sending every question that we've got through a senior officer. So if I could request that, please.
Thank you. Would you like to respond to that?
Yeah, very happy to provide that information, Councillor Brown. No problem.
Thank you. Just one from me then, before we come to Councillor Hackwell and then Councillor Finch. Any? Councillor Hamilton. Yeah, one question is to do with the finance side of things. I would just want to know how much of the year one progress was funded by short-term competitive central government grants versus core council capital allocation, and what happens to the momentum of these green initiatives if external funding were to dry up in year two?
I don't want to pretend I can speak for every action in here to that, and I must certainly look into those, and I can come back with a breakdown for you of which of these actions are funded through government grants and which ones are funded through the council. That's no problem on that. We asked, in terms of the service managers who put actions into this, they were fully aware at the time that it was a 4-year plan, and they needed to consider that funding as part of that. But I can come back with some specifics for you if that would help.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Huckwell.
Thank you, Chair. Bob, in the report it mentions that you've planted 1,300 trees in Burnham Walk. I had one of my residents in that ward complain to me that they've just been abandoned and all the grass is strangling the saplings. Do we actually do any management of those 1,300 trees, or do we just leave them and abandon them and hope they grow? Because he's telling me that it's not doing too well. So what is the plan? There's no good with just planting trees and then just leaving them.
Thanks, Councillor Hackwell. So any planting like this, we work on a 3-year management plan to enable them to establish, but I'm happy to go and have a look at that area specifically and see if there's further work we need to do in that area.
Thank you. Councillor Finch.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for the report, Bob. I'm struggling with it a little bit because it reads more like a climate activity rather than a proper value for money report. We're told about all your events, newsletters, grants, training, tree planting, walking schemes, but the obvious figures are missing.
Sorry, Councillor Finch, could you speak into the microphone, please?
The obvious figures are missing from the report. What I would like to know is how much CO2 did Medway save in year one? How much did it cost for year one? What was the cost per tonne of CO2 saved? And what does that equate to per resident and per household? It states that the climate change action plans intended to reduce carbon and support Medway's ambition to achieve net zero by 2050. But I can't identify a clear summary of either the total carbon savings achieved or the full cost of delivering the programme. Would it be possible to get those figures? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Finch. Bob, would you like to respond?
Thanks, Councillor Finch. Yeah, I'm happy to look into what we can provide and provide those to a committee to have a look at. I don't want to pretend I know the answers instantly, so I will find out for you.
Thank you. Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you, Chair. So, Bob, thank you for the report. I am one of the members on the member working group, so I'm always very like to see what's going on. But so I've got a couple of questions, and they are pretty much the same questions that I ask each time, because I still remain unconvinced that we are being as effective as we could be. So you said that we are 17 or 16 different services feed into the climate change action plan. So how are we ensuring that all those services are working together towards a shared climate vision and that they're not pursuing isolated individual initiatives? That's my first question. So I'm really about this, the sum of the parts is really important, yeah? Then the second thing is, what mechanisms do we have in place to prioritise actions, particularly when service level goals conflict or compete for resources? And then my third question is really about the internal workings. So are there cross-departmental working groups or joint planning sessions to ensure that we are aligning our climate-related projects and actions? So those are my three questions. So it's always about being effective and coordinated?
Thanks, Councillor Hamilton. Hopefully I'll answer all those in one go, because I think that the structure that we've endeavoured to create through the Climate Oversight and Implementation Board, so that was chaired by the Director of Place, now chaired by the Assistant Director of Culture and Community, has a number of very senior officers on there, and every second meeting, so we meet every 6 weeks through that board, but every second meeting, all the service managers are required to come to that meeting to report on progress against theirs, and to kind of be deep dived into their effectiveness and how they're working together. And part of that is looking at how we ensure that effectiveness. I think, if I'm honest, I kind of shared when I first took it over that concern of how do we make sure that everything was joined up. And a lot of the work that we've been trying to do through the board is to make sure that A, the actions in the action plan are joined up, but B, relevant reports and policies and actions that aren't necessarily in here are also being brought to the board for consideration through that lens. So I'm not going to pretend it's perfect. I'm sure there are plenty more we can do, but we are very much trying to do that so that we've got people in the room talking to each other, and people are hearing what others are up to, so that we can try to endeavour to work together.
And I always have a follow-up question. So I guess one of the things I'm thinking about, so obviously I sit on the planning committee as well, and often I read about applications for trees to be cut down and stuff. So just a really practical thing around when we're measuring the carbon capture that is possible within our unitary authority, are we then looking and cross-checking across how many trees have we allowed to be cut down? How many trees are we planting? Are we ensuring that we are not losing our carbon capture capacity? Are we actually building it up? So it's things like that, thinking about the implications of agreeing to cut down trees, and then ensuring that we are not, going backwards, we're going forwards in terms of addressing the most pressing issue that we've got as humanity at the moment.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Hamilton. So I think most officers and most members, will be aware of the tree officer in planning, who is extremely knowledgeable, but be very vocal in ensuring that we maintain our trees and our tree canopy. One of the pieces of work that we've been looking to start, and I've just been liaising with planning over it, is how do we effectively measure that tree canopy so that we have a base, and then we can do exactly that and make sure that that is growing. Because picking up on Councillor Hackwell's earlier point, it's one thing planting the trees, it's another thing establishing them and making sure they have some long-term effect. And I'm very clear, obviously, that the actions we take now, particularly with trees, it is going to be in 20 years' time that we're going to see the benefits of that. So we do need to have a system in place. So I'm happy to obviously talk with Mike, the tree officer, and kind of give you a more detailed answer as to how he looks at it. But he will be, through the planning process, he will be the person who's looking at that.
Sorry, can you go through the microphone?
Right. It was just an example of being aligned and making sure all the parts are working effectively together. It was just one of the examples, and I do have a slight obsession about trees.
Yeah, I'm joining on the trees. So just to follow that one through. So part of that is, as part of the changes we've done through Medway North, the tree officers from Medway North have now come under me as well, so that again we're trying to get that alignment working more effectively, rather than just having a third party who's just kind of looking after stuff. We're actually looking at, well, how are we going to grow this, and what is that strategic approach that we need to take?
Thank you. Councillor MacDonald. Councillor Brown.
Okay, thanks. I'm going to go back to sort of the money question. But before I do that, I'd like to ask the question around where you're proposing an amendment to a target. Where is the change in the target accepted? I'm talking about the roadside nature reserves being now not been a target, but the revised target, the creation of 100 new wildflower meadows across Medway parks and open spaces. So where does the change in the target get agreed? That's one question. The other question is around the current tree stock. Currently working with planning colleagues on the best way to undertake a survey. I mean, is there a time frame for this? Because I know that it's part of your remit, so that's why I'm asking these questions of you. But the next question actually probably Mr. Diamond may struggle to answer. Others may be able to. But while we all recognise that to develop a long-term waste strategy for Medway as a single unitary authority wouldn't be the best use of money. I see from this programme that there is a programme focused on delivering tangible environmental, operational and financial improvements in the short and medium term within the waste improvement programme. It would be helpful if actually we knew what that meant, because it is very nebulous. So my question around that is, who's going to provide us with some detail? The third question is around the budget again. It's rather strange that the person brought it up represented a party that doesn't really believe in climate change, but as we are here to discuss climate change, is there a single line budget for this? And it may be that you don't have the ability to answer that, but the Chief Operating Officer might. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Bob, would you like to respond?
Thanks, Councillor Brown. Going back to the nature reserve, so obviously I've referenced it here. It will then go to the Oversight and Implementation Board for their approval, and then it will go into the Cabinet report for their approval when the report comes to them in August. So they will be the people who will make the change to it, should they decide to.
Could I provide a piece of information that might be helpful in this? In my ward, there are very rare orchid species, and our contractors keep cutting the grass around them despite year after year people trying to stop this happening. If in your role as somebody who would be interested in this, could you actually try and stop this happening year after year? And I can give you the exact location if you need it. Thank you.
Yeah, very happy to do that. If I can get those details from you, I'm very happy to look into that. I've had a similar incident talking about the wild orchids, which I've only sorted out this week, so I'm very happy to look into that because it's absolutely something we should be doing. The tree stock, apologies that I've been liaising with the Chief Planning Officer, who's been tied up on public inquiries, so I will just get back to you as soon as I can with a time frame for that piece of work, because it needs to be done through the planning team. So as soon as I've got that, I will come back to you on that one. In terms of the single budget line, obviously I have a budget for running the climate response team, but that's primarily an officer budget as opposed to anything within that. To give you a budget for this, I would need to go to each of the service managers and ask them for their respective budgets, and which will also feed into whether it's funded through the government or whether it's funded through the council. Apologies, I don't have that information to hand, so I'll need to just work through that.
Thank you.
Did you want me to respond?
Yeah, Phil, you want to come in?
I mean, I think Bob said it really. There's a lot of activity in here. Now, some of that will be delivered by existing teams, and we didn't set an explicit budget to meet that action. It's just that team does that work. Some of the things that featured in the capital programme will have a budget allocation. We haven't got that in the report in front of us, but I think Bob and I will try and get an analysis of all of that activity and where it features in the budget and how it's funded. We'll try and do that as best we can.
Thank you, Phil. Councillor MacDonald.
It's only a quick one, you'll be glad to know, Chair. it's following on from what Phil was just saying and what Bob has said, and many members. I remember we had this back the last time. There was a lot of stuff that wasn't in the report, a lot of stuff that couldn't be answered, and it tends to keep coming back that way. So I don't want to wait another 4 or 5 weeks or anything for this briefing paper. I think it should be an urgent briefing paper that comes back. I don't know why it's not in the reports. If we're taking it so seriously, you know, we have enough reports when it comes to our finance report, when it comes to our Medway first thing and everything else. But we haven't got, you know, this is important. It's no good. No offence, Bob, you know what I'm going to say. It's no good coming to give an update at business support, which oversees this really important topic, if Bob has to go back to his team and see, like you're saying about see if we can get those stats around you know, it's no good. You know, we should have that information. Chair, it's pointless. It's pointless. It's pointless just coming. Otherwise, it's not fair on Bob, not fair on Bob's team, because what it looks like is it comes here tonight, we tick box it, we give it a tick, say thank you very much, Bob, and send it off. It's not good practice in business support, which is supposed to oversee all of the aspects of this. So, you know, I think we do need to have a look at this, and hopefully Bob can help us with his team to bring something back up, which instead of us keep being told we haven't got that information, it should be in there in the first place. And maybe, you know, from your pre-agenda and everything else that you do, we should make sure it's in there before it even comes out to members. So, you know, it has to be done.
Thank you, Councillor MacDonald.
Yeah,
Bob, would you like
apologies,
to
Councillor MacDonald. I totally take on board what you're saying. We live and learn. I mean, you know, if I haven't got the right information for you, I apologise for that, and I will get that information for you.
I don't have any other members, so I'll come in with another one, a couple of questions actually, Bob. Just following on from Councillor Hamilton, but I'm looking at the digital aspect, you know. I mean, does this year one update focus solely on the council internal operation, or do we have reliable data on how successful we are influencing emission across the supply chain? Now, the reason the business community, and so for the reason, and I have another question. I'll come in with that, but we want to know how are we tracking emission? I'll stop there.
I'm not. I need to give that some thought because I'm not sure off the top of my head how I would do that readily. Because obviously there's an element of I can give information, accepting Councillor MacDonald's point that I haven't given the information, but I can give information on things that sit within the council or within the control. It's going to be some piece of work to try and say how is that impacting across the whole of business. But I will happily sit down with our business colleagues and see if I can come up with something that at least may start to give you something towards what you want.
No, thank you. I mean, if we can take that back, I mean, if internally as well, looking at our IT infrastructure and our expanding footprint with regards to increasing data processing, cloud, all our automation system and AR, I believe that's using a lot more resource and producing more emission. It would be nice for us to know how our own, whether we're monitoring our own estate and how we're recording and tracking those. And you know, by all means, emission may have come down because of some of the processes and the automation that's going on. So, which is a good thing, but it just be nice to know how we're tracking those. If you can't, you know, respond now, that's understandable, but in a briefing paper, at least so we can track some of these things going forward. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm very happy to look at how we do that and at least come back with some answer. Given Councillor MacDonald's request for it to be an urgent briefing paper, that may take a little bit longer, so I may have to come back with a separate briefing paper on that because I think that may take a little bit of working through. But yeah, very happy to pick it up and see where I can go with it.
Thank you. Councillor Hamilton.
So we are not tag teaming, but I do have a follow-up question from the chair's questions. So it's really about our procurement and the sustainability targets that we're placing in our procurement contracts. I realise this might be a piece of work, but I do want to ensure that this comes to the committee quite urgently. So in terms of target setting and alignment, what are the sustainability targets that we have in our procurement contracts, and how are they aligned with our overarching climate action goals? Then the next one relates to the fact that we're looking across all 16 services. So how are those sustainability targets consistently applied in procurement practices and contracts across the different services? And then it's looking at, in terms of, are we prioritising our suppliers who have got strong environmental credentials or certifications? So I think we need to think a little bit more carefully about the wider impact that we can have as a council, not merely within our services, but in terms of our supply chains and our contracting relationships. So I guess you're going to tell me that you don't have that information, but I would like that information to be brought to the committee as a matter of urgency, because I think that would enable us to have a much more effective conversation about our climate action as a council.
Thank you, Councillor Hamilton. Bob, would you like to respond?
Yeah, I need to talk to the head of procurement and advise them. I think in terms of that specifics, you probably need them here to talk that through in greater detail, but I'll certainly talk with them and see what briefing paper we can get together for you on that.
Thank you. Councillor Printer.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Bob. This is a big plan for the whole council, but you've mentioned there is, 20 service areas. Do you make each service area create their own plan based on this big plan? Because every service area is obviously different. So does each area then come to you with their plan that you then sign off that it will meet this target?
Not quite as formally as us signing off their plan for them. In terms of how we collated the plan, we went to each service manager and said, tell us what you're doing, this is going into plan. It then goes into their service plans so that they are recording it, and then every quarter they will come to the Climate Oversight and Implementation Board with an update on progress and next steps, and then that's reported through our kind of quarterly reporting system. So there is a mechanism behind it. It doesn't quite work in the same way you said, but there's a mechanism behind it. Yeah.
Are you content with that, Councillor Printer? Yeah. Thank you, Bob. I don't have any other member. Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chair. I move recommendation at page 21. The committee is recommended to note the Year 1 progress update against the Climate Change Action Plan and recommends it is progressed through the appropriate governance processes for reporting Year 1 progress to Cabinet. And we have 2 briefing papers, one of which is urgent, so should be with us within the next couple of weeks. The urgent briefing paper, an analysis of climate change budget resources across different services to promote activity. And the second briefing paper focused on sustainability targets in procurement contracts, looking at alignment with our overarching goals, consistency across services, and prioritising suppliers with certification, accreditation, and a good record on sustainability.
Is that seconded? Agreed? Great. That brings us on to agenda item 6, which is the annual review of the council petition scheme. I'll ask Wayne Hemingway, Head of Democratic Services, to introduce the report. Wayne.
Yeah, thank you, Chairperson. So this report sets out a review of petitions over the past year, details of which are set out in section 4 of the report. Members will note that we received 21 valid petitions last year compared to 14 the previous year. All of these related to the Regen, Culture and Environment Directorate, and specific details are then set out in Appendix A to the report. Members, you'll also recall that at the last meeting, the committee considered some proposed changes to the petition scheme. So your comments were considered by Cabinet in April, and as we know, the proposals were moved and seconded at the full council meeting in April and taken forward without discussion to the July full council meeting. So all members will have an opportunity to discuss the proposed changes again in a few weeks' time. So obviously this report is backward looking, and obviously at July we'll be looking at changing the scheme with effect from 1st of August, subject to council approval. So for myself, nothing further to add, but happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Wayne. Councillor Field.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for this very thorough report. It's most of the petitions referenced here come to the committee that I chair, given the nature of the types of petitions, particularly around environmental or, in particular, highways and transport matters. It's very useful to see this, and actually, I'm glad that actually the outcomes of the petition system will mean that we should be able to introduce the first proper 20-mile-an-hour zone, which should help to improve road safety and encourage more walking and cycling. So that's really good to see. And it's a shame that the previous councillor from the Reform Group isn't here to go through some of his issues with broadening access to the democratic process. I think we all here on this group agree that actually broadening access isn't some lefty self-interest group. It's more about widening participation in the process. So I just want to thank everyone in Democratic Services for all their work and support to enabling wider access to this system.
Thank you, Councillor Field. Wayne, do you want to respond to that?
Nothing to add really, but just say thank you for your comments. Thank you.
Any other member? Councillor Finch.
Thank you, Chair. And thanks for the report, Wayne. I think residents would be interested to know whether the petitions actually influence decisions, not just whether they receive a response or not. So could you tell us how many petitions actually change something, and whether the current thresholds still give residents a realistic route to influence council decisions? Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Finch. Wayne, would you like to respond?
Yes. So thank you, Chairperson. Thank you, Councillor Finch. So obviously the outcomes of petitions are in obviously Appendix A to the report. So that's there. It's obviously published on the website for everybody to read. Obviously we've tried to give you a flavour of those outcomes from petitions in Section 5 of the report. I think all I would say in general terms that, you know, a petition may not be on every occasion that the council can kind of meet the full aims of that petition, but obviously the report gives the information as set out in Appendix A. I probably don't really have anything to add at this stage on that particular question. Thank you.
Thank you, Wayne. Councillor Brown.
I wasn't going to speak on this, but I do want to thank Democratic Services for the work that they put into this. But I also want to thank the people who've responded and produced results from these petitions. As it was clear that it's in the report, just to note all this hard work and read the reports.
Thank you, Councillor Brown.
Did he call me?
Councillor Hamilton? Vice Chair.
No,
Excellent. I move the recommendation at page 33. The committee is asked to note the annual review of the council's petition scheme.
Is that seconded? Councillor Jones, is that agreed? That brings us on to agenda item 7, the One Medway Council Plan, Performance Monitoring Report and Strategic Risk Summary. I will ask the Chief Information Officer, Paul Boyd, to introduce the report. Paul.
Great, thank you, Chair. So This report presents the performance against the One Medway Council plan for Q4, which is also the end of year performance, and the strategic risk summary. There are 4 performance indicators that fall under the remit of this committee. 2 of those measures have met or exceeded their annual target, and that's the reduction of phone calls and the percentage of digital interactions. And 2 have an upward trend, which is our website accessibility score and users finding our forms very easy or easy to use. Moving on to the risk elements, there were a number of changes to the risk register scores on the strategic risk register. SR03B, insufficient budget funding, that's decreased from an A2 to a B2, which reflects the change in the medium-term financial planning, because we now have the 3-year settlement. And SR54, recruitment and retention, has increased from C3 to B2, reflecting some failed recruitment campaigns and the difficult recruitment environment at the moment. And then 5.2, a risk has been removed, which is the Gunwharf building closure. Now that the rack work's been remediated, the work now is around the Gunwharf refurbishment and the moving of staff to different locations. So there will be some risks added when we do the Q1 review. But at the moment, that risk of Gunwharf closure because of rack has now been mitigated. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Paul. Any member? Councillor Huckwell.
Thank you, Chair. Paul, just quickly, we know that the telephone reduction has been quite successful over the last 4 or 5 years. Last month or the month before, we introduced the AI search. Are we got any specific measurements on how people are staying longer on the website or find the right place, so that we know that that's been a success as well? Would you just expand on that if you could?
Yeah, so we'll be adding the reporting. We get a weekly report of what's been searched, what the response has been, and from launch, we were changing every hour. We were making changes to the website, and then we could recrawl it, which improved the performance. And we had, for those first 4 weeks, enhanced support, so we could make those changes immediately. We had on-hand support from Jardu that were helping with that. Within the first 2 or 3 days, things had settled down, and the reports that we get, over 90% in that first period were successful results. And we could start introducing those performance reports into this, because it's been very successful.
Thank you. Councillor Brown.
Hi, Paul. Thanks for the report. I'm a little confused on some of these measures that are being reported to us. Reduction in calls, and then somewhere else it's an increase. But what's really worrying me is that, okay, 80% of the people say that our services were very easy or easy to use. What have we done about, and it's in both of the surveys results, is about 300 people unsatisfied or don't find it easy to use. And if I were one of those, I'd be ringing us up. But what are we doing about them specifically? That's my question on the results. I'm a bit confused as to why we're counting different things in different periods, but what you've said to Councillor Hackwell makes some sense, that there's been changes ongoing in especially the website. Mind you, it's not the most inviting website. When do we get around to making it more inviting? And the other thing I wanted to ask about is this quick pay. Is quick pay part of what you're doing? Because I believe that was introduced a week ago. Used it today. It's clunky, but that's not necessarily your problem today. But hopefully it will be resolved. Thank you.
Okay, so the suite of measures, it can get confusing because the call reductions we want to go down, the use of the forms we want to go up. So we try within the performance reporting and presentation say whether it's an upward trend that we're looking for or a downward trend. We are looking to revamp the whole performance monitoring for Q1 to make it much clearer, because I accept it can be a bit confusing. Yes, it's coming. It is coming. So with regard to the how inviting the website is, one of the measures that we have on the score is accessibility of the website. So websites that are all jazzy and have moving pictures and lots of photos are really inaccessible. So we need to make our websites for people that have trouble with vision and use it and using screen readers. So the accessibility score is really key, one of our key measures, and we're up to 90% now for this quarter, which is, I think we started at 73, so we've had a dramatic increase in the accessibility of the website.
Thank you. Would you like to come back,
Yeah.
Councillor Brown?
Yeah, I mean, this is supposed to be a business website. Business websites are not dull. Business websites are not inaccessible. And I do commend the increase in the accessibility. But that website is not inviting. And if we don't make it more inviting, you're going to get stuck at your 80%. And that we can't afford that.
Thank you. Would you like to come back, Paul?
Yeah, so what we've done with the website, because I accept for areas like leisure, theatres and culture, we want a much more marketing type website, and that's what we can develop for those areas, and that's what we've done. For the transactional type website, we're following the UK government approach, which is, if you've ever done a driving licence application or a passport, it's very, very, it services you. It's very clear, it's very plain, few interactions per page. So it's that balance between being transactional and easy to use for all users, but then having that flair and marketability for those services that need it, especially the commercial. So you mentioned the business, it's those commercial side that we do want to provide that service for.
Thank you, Paul. Councillor Printer.
Yes, I don't think there's anyone here that can answer it, but obviously I just want to acknowledge the increase in the recruitment retention issue, because it's obviously related in the report, and that's a concern that we have. Like I said, I don't think there's anyone here that can answer that, the reasons for it, but, you know, obviously, you know, it's an issue that we don't want to be getting. I wonder if that, is that LGR, is it the building closing, is that going to impact that even more?
Thank you. Would you like to respond, Paul?
Yeah, I think the main current driver, LGR, is an issue, both for recruitment and for retention. So we are seeing some staff that see an LGR come in. It's the traditional council thing was job security. If we know the councils are all changing in 2 years, that has had an impact. We've seen it in our teams, and it's that perennial home working, more flexible working, and being near London. All those kind of combine.
Yeah, again, thank you for that answer. Hopefully, though, we're not just going to sit back and let LGR happen, and we're going to do what we need to do to ensure that doesn't become an issue.
Thank you, Councillor Printer. Councillor MacDonald.
I always say it's only a quick one, don't I, when I first come in, but it's not a moan, Chair. But I suppose it's just saying around, Paul, I suppose you're all hoping it doesn't, but on a risk point of view, I know LGR has to come into every meeting we go to, we try and keep it out of it, but is there, in your risk profile and register, you must have what would happen if it doesn't go, if LGR doesn't go ahead, right? Does things change? Because it's okay us keep saying, well, LGR, but if it doesn't, if something happens or a decision is changed or there's a, I don't know, a court, you know, like court action going on where people don't agree with the options, it impacts, doesn't it? Because everything I've seen is agendaed to LGR. But if that all delays or goes, there must be, even with, I won't dare go on with Phil about finance, but, you know, there's so much work going on, who knows? It's just that risk profile.
Thank you, Councillor MacDonald. Paul, would you like to respond?
Yeah, so LGR is now in the strategic risk register for all of the eventualities that may or may not happen, including going ahead or not.
So all of the improvements, sorry, Chair, all of the improvements we're doing is not just because of LGR, we're doing them anyway, right? Yeah.
Absolutely, and it's had the double whammy, so it's improved things for Medway residents immediately, some of the things we've rolled out, but a lot of it, especially around the data, getting the forms together, being clear, has helped with our preparedness. It has, yeah.
Thank you, Paul. Phil, would you like to comment?
Yeah, well, I think Paul just, his last point has just said exactly what I was going to say, you know, that I think all that LGR has done is focused our minds on the things that we're not doing well. and saying we need to get this in a good place. I mean, statement of accounts, you know, that's focused the mind on trying to get to a place where we're getting clean audit opinions, that sort of thing. So I don't think it's a risk in that we're going to have expended effort and energy and resources doing something that's abortive, because it won't be. It'll just make, if Medway continues into the future, a better Medway. Yeah.
Thank you, Phil, and thank you, Paul. Councillor Finch.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Paul. Could I ask about the risk performance table on page 67? Cyber security is down there as an ever-present catastrophic risk. It's being proposed as managed. Do you have independent assurance from that? And could you explain a bit more about that, please? Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Finch.
Yeah,
Paul,
so cyber security is one of those, we always equate it to securing a building. You can have the fence, you can have the security guards. We've done everything we can. It's managed, but there's always the potential of someone getting in. Cyber security is much more about behaviour, so it's the awareness of staff not clicking. It's the equivalent of leaving a door open with staff clicking on phishing links and everything around that. With regard to how it's managed, we do a public service network assessment. So we have all of our systems scanned, and that allows us to connect to NHS networks and do that sharing. So there's a lot of governance and testing that we do around our cyber security.
Thank you. Just one from me then, Paul. The council has invested quite a bit, heavily, I would say, in digital automation and AI to secure structured budget savings. So I just wonder if either you or Phil could point to any specific cashable savings realized via Medway 2.0 in Q4, and whether these automated platforms, just following on from Councillor Preto's question, whether these platform has successfully impacted in, the reduction in staff turnover or recruitment pressures that we noted in the previous workforce review.
So with regard to the impact, I've got to say the investment into AI at Medway has been relatively low. So all of the developments that we've seen, apart from Agent X, which we were an early adopter, so we had a really good deal with that one, most of the other developments have been in-house by the ICT department. So as part of our Microsoft 365 investment that gives us all Teams and Outlook, and that also gives us the automation tools. Copilot AI is available to all staff as standard, so everyone's got access to AI without making an investment in a company to come in and build it. So a lot of the work has been done in-house. The direct savings in Q4 have led directly to underspends, certainly within cabs. Those fall of numbers have enabled us to hold vacancies. In other services, we've seen they've been able to hold the vacancies or cope with the recruitment issues that we've just been talking about. They haven't had to replace because they've been using AI and automations to support. And one example in Q4 was the automation of our invoice processing. So previously, all the people that invoice the council send an email. Historically, somebody would have to click on that email, open it, check it, verify it against the criteria. Oh, it's the wrong purchase order number. They'd have to write an email to the, could you please provide the correct, send it back. Currently, that's now all automated. So an email comes in, the AI scans the email box, an automation flow runs, checks automatically against the criteria. If it's not correct, it's automatically emailed back to the supplier saying, you're missing the PO number, you've got the wrong date, it doesn't match with our records. That's now all automated. So that's somebody that used to have to do that, doesn't need to do that anymore. Then the conversation comes, is it better value to reduce the headcount because they're not doing that? Or is it better value to have them working on something else within the service? And that's a service by service decision that they make as part of the budget setting process.
Thank you. I mean, I can see efficiency there, but I mean, have you got any numbers to say, well, we have saved X amount? Phil.
Yeah, thank you. So the activity that Paul's talked about that took place in and was implemented in quarter 4, you're seeing that in the budget for 26-27. So if you go to the budget report in February, in Appendix 3, I think it is, which is where all the BSD savings are, there's about, is it 460,000-ish? Something like 468,000, I think, that we reflected as savings in terms of, so Medway 2.0 reported service pattern, there was 32,000, which was a post that we took out of the establishment. There's lots of things in there. The Medway Council tax online reduction in scanning and indexing team, we lost some posts there. It's all in that budget report. I won't sit here and read them all out to you now, but they are the cashable ones. We took that money out of our budget for the current year.
Thank you, Phil. Paul, would you like to come back?
Yeah, and all of those are reflected in the FIT plan. So in the One Medway Financial Improvement and Transformation Plan Q1 reporting, we'll have those savings reflected within that, which will be coming out shortly.
Thank you. Just coming back to you on the FIT plan, Paul. Will you say the Q4, let's go my question, Q4 strategic risk register, does that show any escalating risk regarding our ability to deliver the remaining transformation milestone, especially considering the high complexity cases that we are currently absorbing through universal credit migration?
No, there's been no escalation of those risks, and the team are working closely with Gemma and her team as well, with the welfare and benefits team. So there's been no escalation across those.
There's been no escalation. Thank you. Any other member? Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chair. I move the recommendations as written at page 55. 1.1, the committee is asked to consider the Q4 2025-26 progress of the performance indicators used to monitor progress of the Council's priorities, as set out in Appendix 1 to the report. And 1.2, the committee is asked to note the strategic risk summary as set out in Appendix 2 to the report.
Is that supported? Councillor MacDonald. That's great. Great. That brings us on to agenda item 8, which is the Capital and Revenue Outturn and Annual Debt Write-Off Report. I will ask Chief Operating Officer Phil Watts to introduce the report. Phil.
Thank you, Chair. This is the annual report on the Council's capital and revenue outturn for the financial year April 25 to March 26. It represents a historical record and is purely for information. Members of the committee are asked to specifically note the 25-26 revenue and capital outturn position as summarised. The revenue is summarised at section 4. It represents a £9.8 million overspend against the agreed budget, but that will be funded from an increased capitalisation direction, which is now at just over 28 million for the 25-26 financial year. The committee is also asked to note the Council's reserves position as summarised in section 13, which preserves a general fund balance of just over 10 million. You're asked to note the declassification of reserves under Director's delegation in order to facilitate the request that Council agree the addition of 3.7 million from general reserves to the revenue budget to part fund the final overspend as set out in section 13. Committee is asked to note that Council has been asked to agree a number of reductions to the capital programme, either because they've underspent or because we're funding them from alternative sources. And finally, to note the debts written off during the year. I'll try and answer any questions you might have in relation to the overall position, together with any specific questions insofar as they relate to services within the remit of this committee.
Thank you, Phil. Do we have any member? Councillor Hockwell. Microphone, please, Councillor.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Phil, for the report. I do understand it's a statement of fact, but I'd like to ask some thought-provoking questions that it throws up. So, with our reserves standing at just £12,000 above the minimum that you set, how confident are we that this year's budget will return enough money, or do you think we will have to go to and ask cap in hand for another year's EFS? That's one question. As far as I can remember, every year adult services has overspent their budget. Is there enough in this year's budget, or would we expect an overspend and therefore be moving in the same way as we do, or have been for the last 3 years? Could you explain a little bit more about the absconded debtor backlog and how long and how many years that was accumulated of? Because 2.4 million is quite a lot to write off for unpaid council tax. And I'm still very, very concerned about the major overspend in the interest and financing, which is nearly 6 million. The report indicates that it was because the interest rates did not fall as forecasted by our Treasury advisors. How confident are you that we're using the right Treasury advisors if they can't predict I know it's crystal ball gazing, but if they can't predict the PWB, is it about time we found some new advisors?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hockwell. Phil, would you like to respond?
Yes, thank you. Okay, so I am going to be very honest with you here. You asked about my confidence levels on a number of these things. I'm less confident than I was. So, in terms of adult social care, the outturn position moved dramatically from where we'd been forecasting at range 3. I'm really annoyed about it because I think that our forecasting, something's gone awry somewhere. It was a bit shocking. And I'm not going to point a figure on where that is, but what I will say is that Jackie and I we've sat down and we've had a number of meetings to work out what's going wrong and what we need to fix. But obviously, following that through, that movement in the outturn from what we were forecasting at range 3, obviously does then call into doubt the budget that we've set for 26-27. And yes, I think we're looking at some significant pressures in adult social care. Now, I flagged that really early with CMT, and I flagged it really early with the administration. And obviously, officers and members are mobilising really quickly to deal with it. We've there's an acknowledgement that the existential issue confronting us is adult social care, and we're going to put some additional resource into it. So Jackie's really, Jackie Brown, Assistant Director, Adult Social Care, her focus is on understanding the data and then looking at areas where there's opportunities for us to reduce costs, because actually that's where the big spend is and that's where we've got to reduce it. So that's all I can say on that, really. We've recognised there's a massive issue. Yes, my confidence level about whether the budget that we set for adult social care this year is sufficient is lower than it was if you asked me 4 months ago. The absconded debtors, I think this is an issue that we try not to write off debt too soon, because there's always a chance we collect it. And historically, although our in-year collection rate tended to be around the 97% mark, ultimately our data demonstrated that we do collect over 99% of it eventually. Feels like with cost of living crisis and that sort of thing, that isn't necessarily happening. And I've over the last couple of years put additional resource into the debtors team, and they're going back and chasing this old debt and recognising that actually we're not going to get it. So that's explains those write-offs in year. It's us basically trying to do a bit of tidying up and clearing the decks, but the minute you do that, it hits revenue. So. You then talked about interest and financing and the risks around that. Yeah, so I've explained to this committee, to audit committee, that if you go over the last 2 or 3 years, our projections and the projections from our Treasury advisors were all about the interest rates coming down, and we've reflected that into MTFOs, into our forecasting in year, into our budgets, and it hasn't manifested. And indeed, following the conflict in the Middle East, PWLB rates have gone up to 5.5% now. So it doesn't look like it's coming down anytime soon. Now I'm going to have to reflect all of that pressure into our medium-term financial plans, and it will be for the organisation to identify the savings to address that. Your question about Treasury advisors, we have this year, for the first time, I mean, we must have been with Link and their predecessors. It was Sector, I think, back in the day when I became CFO. We've been with them year on year for a very long time. This year, we've gone to a new company called Arling Close, new set of Treasury advisors. Lots of local authorities use them. Lots of local authorities, my peers around the Kent Finance Officer table, speak very highly of them. So we'll see how that works out for us. I think I've answered all your questions there.
Thank you, Phil. Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Councillor Hackwell, as well, for the question. I just wanted to refer you to something that it's confusing me, and it's only the way it's written, I think, in the report. It's on page 78. And it's around the figure, well, it's around the remark. I'll read the last paragraph of what I'm referring to. It's around the education budget. As at 31st of March 25, the DSG reserve was reporting 16.4 million deficit, and this is increased to 19.3 or 4 by March 26, after the in-year overspend of 2.8 million was transferred to the reserve. And then the last sentence says, this was slightly higher by, and that's a figure that I don't recognise, because it's either 10 million.
I think it's 1 million.
Okay, if that's the case.
You just missed a comma.
Okay. Sorry, it's 1 million then, right? So it is only slightly higher. So 1 million is just slightly higher at the moment, yeah? My question is that we've got lots of pockets of information about things that are getting slightly better, and I'm very happy about that. But I think, I'm sure there's other people think about this as well. We need to have, and I'm sure that you were leading on this one, have a big review of the overspends. And I know we've changed the timing of reporting and the depth in which you report within CMT and DMT. But I'm still concerned that some of the figures that we have as overspends are fairly major in terms of things like, you know, management costs and things like that. If they go into an overspend, we can't blame third parties. They have to be within house.
Okay, so we started with the DSG discussion. That's a big accumulated deficit on the reserve. The major part of that is obviously send, and we're in safety valve, and our projections at the moment, especially on the back of the government introducing the higher needs stability grant, are that we will come out of deficit, and we'll be one of the few upper tier authorities that do. So the high needs stability grant is another £12 million over and above the safety valve grant that we got over the last however many years it is, 5 or 6 years of safety valve, and you know, with a fair wind, I'm being told by the end of this year we'll be at our accumulated deficits on the high needs block will be gone. Within that as well, there are deficits around the early years block and the schools block, but a lot of that is timing issues in terms of when the grant comes in. So that explains that one. I'm not sure I understand the question about management costs, overspends. Have you got a specific one you want me to look at? Public health management, okay. Yeah, I'm fairly confident that public health, as always, will come in within budget, because they do every year. And the thing about the public health grant, because it's ring fenced, we move money in and out of reserves, and there's planned movement of funds into reserves generally at in every single public health budget. That 239,000 will be covered from a drawdown from reserves. Yeah, was there anything else you want me to cover? Sorry, I'll turn that off. Yeah.
No, I am very happy to celebrate the improved offer from government and the recognition that SEND and high needs have to be funded. And thankfully, there has been that move towards a recognition that we need that money to come in. I'm just saying that it's the timing. I'm hoping, like you, that it comes in quite reasonably.
Thank you, Councillor Brown, and thank you for your answer, Phil. I don't have any other members. So just one from me, Phil, and that will be to do with the overspend. I'm just wondering whether that has changed or altered our medium-term borrowing strategy for capital projects moving forward in any way, and if it has, if you could elaborate how that would have altered.
I don't think at the moment it's altered the capital programme. We will need to look at the capital programme and what's in it at the moment, but a lot of the schemes, especially the big ticket ones, are a long way down the track, and the administration still wants to pursue that. I mean, pursue those schemes. But the message from me is that the revenue impact of that borrowing is part of the gap that we've got closing in balancing the medium-term financial outlook, and that's what the administration and senior officers are working to try and achieve.
Thank you. I don't have any other member. Vice Chair.
I move the recommendation at page 73.
Is that supported? Councillor McDonald, is that agreed? Thank you. And that brings us on to agenda item 9. Agenda item 9, the work program. I'll ask Steve Dickens, Democratic Services Officer, to introduce the report. Steve.
Thank you, Chair. So members are asked to note the work programme and the work programmes of the other overview and scrutiny committees. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Steve. Any member? Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chair. I move the recommendations at page 91A. The committee is asked to agree the provisional work programme at Appendix 1 to the report. B, the committee is asked to note the work programmes of the other overview and scrutiny committees at Appendix 2 to the report.
Is that supported? Councillor MacDonald, is that agreed? Thank you, and that brings us to the end of tonight's Business Support and Digital Committee. Thank you very much.